Hello and welcome to another episode of the CG Garage. This is episode number 455, featuring Kim Davidson, who is the president and CEO of SideFX Software. He's actually not just a president, he was one of the original founders, and yes, he's been at the company since 1987. He is truly a legend in the world of computer graphics and has seen it all in terms of how the businesses run, how features are run, how all of these things were done way back in the day until today. So honestly, this is an incredible history lesson in the world of computer graphics, and especially how it affects the things like the visual effects world. And I really thought it was amazing to have him in there. He even talks about, generally how SideFX got started, how it was part of another company, and you just have to listen to the story, but it was really kind of interesting to hear all of that. And he also talks about, the influence of why Houdini is the way it is and how it was basically very different from anything else at the time, and how now it's sort of integrating itself into lots of different areas. It's not just integrating itself into areas that are different from effects. It's doing things like lighting and actually getting very interesting in terms of the world of animation, but it's also looking at different disciplines and how it's getting into things like the AEC market, which is the architecture market, as well as automotive. And he's even thinking about, wouldn't it be interesting if Houdini started to be used in courtroom witness stuff, which is actually kind of interesting in itself. So really, really great. Talks a lot about why they embraced USD and how that got part of Solaris. And he talks about everything, including, I asked him what are some of the crazy things that Houdini does that he really thinks it's interesting. He says, well, more interesting right now is in the most recent Houdini. He loves the new feather system, which in his own words is completely over the top, but completely amazing at the same time. So I just think it's awesome. So again, SideFX and Houdini have been a very important part of the world of computer graphics. They've won many SciTech awards, including an actual Oscar, which is very, very rare in SciTech. So it's kind of awesome that Kim was able to talk about that and about that amazing history. So I've been wanting to talk to him for a while. We've actually been trying to do this podcast way back in the beginning of the year, and it finally got around to happening sometime in the fall, and now it's being released now. So really awesome to have Kim on. Okay, we do have a couple of announcements at Chaos here, a couple of product stuff. V-Ray 6.2 is out. Very excited to have that. It's got many new things, including cross-platform integration with Enscape, but more importantly, it's got a lot of things going on in terms of Material X integration, and we've enhanced a lot of our USD support as well. So definitely things to check out. You can just go to chaos.com for that. But I also want to talk about Corona 11, which has also been released recently, and it's got a lot of new features there as well. So if you guys are interested in Corona, you can definitely check those out. Corona tiled map has been added, a lot of new, which allows you to do some interesting things with tiles, such as bathroom tiles, kitchen tiles, etc. And procedurally, we've done a lot of things in Corona in terms of how we implemented scatter. Then certain things like allow scatter to work at different altitudes, so you can do min and max altitudes in terms of terrains and stuff like that. It was pretty cool. Also a look at, so in case you have a bunch of things that are scattered, you can have them all pointing in a specific look at direction, which is cool. Some new edge map stuff, including edge scatter. So a lot of new features. Definitely go check those out. Just go to corona-render.com for all of the news on Corona Render if you guys are interested in Corona 11, which is really cool as well. Okay, I do have one more announcement. I want to talk about events. You can find all our events at chaos.com/events. We can have a new webinar specifically on ArcViz masterclasses with creative lighting with our very own good friend Nikos Nikolopoulos. This is happening December 6th through the 25th. This is a ArcViz masterclass on creative lighting, and is part of a series of 8 of them. They're going to happen between December 6th, 2023, and will end on September 26th, 2024. So if you want to follow this series, go ahead and go to chaos.com/events to reserve your seat in this webinar. All right, that's about it for our announcements in the company. If you guys want to know more about the podcast, of course, you guys know how to follow us there. Just go to chaos.com/CG Garage. And if you'd like to follow us on Facebook, it is facebook.com/CG Garage Podcast. If you'd like to watch this podcast, all of our videos are up at youtube.com/Chaos Group TV, including the podcast videos. And if you'd like to give us some feedback or suggestions on different episodes or guests, we've been getting lots of great ones this year, and we'd love to continue to hear your suggestions. Our email is labs@chaos.com. Again, that is labs@chaos.com. But for now, please enjoy episode number 455 with Kim Davidson.
Welcome to another CG Garage, where the Chaos Group talks. You'll know it's over when the last bucket drops. We're gonna fire off rays in high dynamic range. We know that ambient occlusion is passe. Global illumination won't lead you astray. And while image-based lighting is really swell, you need to make sure everything has Fresnel.
Okay, so Kim, it's been we have been trying to make this happen for months and months, and finally we're able to do it. So thank you so much for being on. I think we met in person for the first time at the Real Time Economics Summit.
I think so.
Yeah, which was fun. And I saw you at SIGGRAPH briefly. But you obviously have an extremely long and interesting history in obviously in the industry. And I'm curious, because obviously SideFX has been around for a very long time, but what got you interested in doing what you do? Like, what was the things that poked your interest in terms of making images on a computer?
Well, I've been around 36 years for SideFX, and a couple of years before that at a company called Omnibus, and that really was in a little bit of computer graphics before that. But remember, that was the days of computer graphics, or maybe you don't remember.
Yeah.
But that was mainframe computers, big mag tapes, recording to videotape from an Iconis frame buffer. Wait for 20 minutes, trigger it, throw away the picture because you couldn't afford to save the pictures. It was too much storage. So that was real early. But what got me interested, Chris, was I just interested in a lot of stuff, art and science all the time. And when I'd see that, finally went to this one place to write some software for them in Toronto called Omnibus Computer Graphics, which I just mentioned. They had gotten a grant from the Canadian government to write their own software, because everyone in those days, there was no commercial software to speak of.
Right.
And so I started writing. I knew nothing about 3D animation software, really.
But did you study computer graphics or at all, or
no?
So what was your education in?
I think the U of T might have had the digital graphics project going, Ohio State,
Right.
But I wasn't aware, and certainly where I went to Waterloo for computer science. I also did architecture at Waterloo because I liked art and science. I thought that would be it. So I did computer science at Waterloo, but it was like, it's like, okay, I've done that, but they didn't have opened up the graphics lab yet. So like, I didn't know there was going to be a graphics thing going, but then all of a sudden I'm at this place writing software, looking at Ohio State, Frank Crow's scene assembler, it's like, okay, we can do something. We need to do something like this. Otherwise it was a lot of, just learning on the job, Chris. Was
it Omnibus? Is that what it was called?
Omnibus Computer Graphics, which swallowed Digital Productions, which worked on the last Starfighter, and it swallowed Robert Abel, who worked in commercials. So there was an Omnibus in California, on the Paramount lot. Actually, the headquarters was Toronto. They were a public company on the stock exchange, and they had a New York office. And the idea there, I think, was right. Get big or go home, because you could see the commercial software was coming. I think Wavefront came out in the second year with Preview, which really and ran on an SGI Iris, and it's like, oh wow, you can have a graphics box for only $120,000, and in those days, double that, what that price would have been, and it was called the personal Iris. I don't know how personal a box that stands about the size of my desk here is,
Yep.
but that was, and it did. I like to exaggerate on stuff like this, but what did it do? 22 polygons a second in the viewport or something. Right. It's like, but you could see it. You could see it. Before then, it was just like we were just doing drafting paper and calculating, let's see, right hand rule, the camera would be, okay, no, wait, it's and so it was all like, tracing paper and things like that. I mean, great stories, and it was all magical, but by today it's like, well, you got that's incredibly hard, but
Right.
it was incredibly fun.
Yeah, for sure. So that was really when you started to look at graphics a lot more, I guess, at Omnibus, right?
Yeah, that was we did a little bit at a company that called HCR, which was run by Ron Becker, which is a sort of one of those pioneers in graphics. He'd done some early graphics, but he was basically porting Unix to all the big mainframe computers. That was a big popular thing to do in those days, is put Unix on, the Convex and the Compact and Advent and all those early big mainframe computers. So I was doing that, but a few little graphics experiments there, because that was a lot of Ron's background. Ron Becker, who founded the HCR, which became SCO, which took over Unix thing for them. And I was long gone when a lot of that happened, but I did a couple years at just porting and having a little bit of exposure to graphics, but it really was at Omnibus in 1985 where I go, I've died and gone to heaven. This is cool. It combines everything I love to do.
Yeah, art and computer science, right?
Science making art. It's like at the highest level, and motion. I mean, that was real important to me too, because.
Right.
There's a lot of things where, you could do a CAD CAM kind of, drawing of a Timex watch or a car frame or something. But I loved animation as a kid and did a lot of stop frames. So, the fact that there was we could do graphics in motion, I think that appealed. And I think that the fact that everything in Houdini today, anything you want to animate, you want to put time on, you can do that. So I think that came really early on, because we were always doing flying logos. I mean, flying logos built the business, and so the time element was always in what I did.
Anything that had a variable could be animated, right?
Well, yeah, that's the way we thought. It's I think being lazy is a good thing, because it's oh man, the director wants the type thicker. He wants the thickness to animate. It's okay, let's just write this once, and anyone who ever wants this, thickness and
right.
And slant. We'll just make that a variable of time.
Right. That's awesome. So what inspired you to start SideFX?
Well, as I said, at Omnibus, I died and gone to heaven.
Right.
And Omnibus was on the exchange, and they must have had, I was sort of middle management, I guess. I started as a programmer, but I ended up holding the animation director's job. I was the head of animation as well. So there were probably 8 people in Toronto that reported to me as animators, and all of a sudden it was April 1987, and in walked the receiver in bankruptcy. What's going on? I guess I know now it's probably they defaulted on something or other.
Right.
And so other than finishing off a few jobs, most or all of us were out on the streets immediately. And there's nothing else I wanted to do. I just thought, I am not entrepreneurial. I didn't, I failed every entrepreneur test that I took at the time, but there was nothing in Toronto I wanted to do, but I knew I could animate and make money. That was a business. So if we could set up. So, and we wanted to keep it lean. So Greg Hermanovic and I said, okay, let's, just the two of us, scrape some nickels together and put a bid in for the software we'd written at Omnibus. And keep on going and see what we can do. And at least we could I could phone up and get jobs from advertising agencies and do the animation. And sometimes I'd write code at night, but mostly it was Greg writing all the time and me doing mostly animation and some code, storyboards, that kind of bids on jobs. Yeah.
So you guys got your software back from the bankruptcy?
Yeah, exclusive rights. It's sealed bid. You don't know what's going to happen. And we put in 2 bids, one just for the software, and one for some hardware. So we were successful in the larger bid.
Nice.
We did, and we kept on going. Yeah, it was. We're up and running within about 6 months after getting some scraping nickels together. Neither of us are rich, so
sure.
Uncles, aunts, brothers, sisters.
Right. Wow. So what's the inspiration behind the name SideFX?
I think it was the thing at the time. It's mostly Greg. All the marketing and outward look. I'm more of an inside guy. As I'd already told you, I'm not entrepreneurial, but I make a good partner for an entrepreneur, and I think that was Greg. And he loved these names. He's got a company Derivative now, and Touch 101, and I think that was also a thing at the time, like SideFX. Yeah, that's kind of a weird name, bad thing, like Soft Image and
Right.
Alias, Star Stepping. It's like, what the hell were we thinking? Vertigo. I don't think
Yep.
any of these were good names in that, but they were at the time, I guess.
Right.
So,
Wavefront is pretty good too.
yeah.
I got it. Well,
But anyway, it was the names of the time. I think
Sure.
they were trendy.
Sure. And then, so I guess, I mean, you guys, I mean, I'll I know that PRISMS was a predecessor to Houdini. Did you guys start selling software right away, or did you guys really
Yeah.
just right away? Okay.
Pretty much, because so we have the exclusive rights to the software, but if I go back just before Omnibus closed, John Penny, who was the owner, operator, founder of Omnibus rather, said, we got to we should sell this software. And he, backing up even further, let me put it this way. We had 3 sites of Omnibus, and we were over the internet. We were updating through, Connect Unix and modems. We were updating the software, developers at every site, animators every site. So we were actually using the internet. We're like a franchise back in 1986 when you
Right.
think about it, making the software updated over the internet every night by doing diffs, Unix diffs and CMPs and binary checks and things to see what had changed, and only sending the minimum. So we already knew that. And plus we had to have documentation. It was Unix NROF that was kind of our base for the documentation, because everyone had to know what this thing did. So we were sort of already supporting 2 customers or 3 customers, because we were a customer in Toronto. And then
Who were your first customers?
So John Penny said, well, us ourselves,
Sure.
we're always the first customer. That's what makes any, lots of startups that the first customer is the person who's got the goal need problem. But John Penny says to Greg, we got to get on a plane. We got to go sell this software. So he goes this is months before it closed. We had no indication that they were that dire straits.
Sure.
We knew that they were a little stretched, but he flies to Japan and sells to the Tokashinsha Film Company. He sold the licensing rights to the PRISM software, and he also sold the name. I mean, I don't have the details, but it's Omnibus Japan, and they're still Omnibus Japan as a customer today.
Wow.
So that was their first. Then they flew to London, England, and sold to a company called CFX, Computer FX, which was Craig Zeruni, if you know,
Yeah.
was the founder, and he had a partner there. And so he sold to Craig, and then they flew home, and we thought, oh, we have 2 customers. Anyway, after we got the rights to the software, we called them and said, we have the rights. Do you want us to support you? And they go, in both cases, they said yes.
Wow.
So it's like, okay, well, there's 2 customers. We're a customer. And then all our people scattered, and pretty soon we had Dome Productions here in town, which doesn't exist anymore, and Floyd Gillis in New York. So like the people we knew didn't know where to get software, but people wanted to do 3D software. Right. Maybe not them, but maybe someone they went to work for, and they said, well, I know PRISMS. And so within a year, we probably had like eight customers or something like that. Enough to say, I don't have to animate anymore. I can just focus on the software.
On software. Well, what was the inspiration behind PRISMS compared to what other software was doing, or there was no other software? Really?
Not really. That's what made every software kind of different, and really different. Symbolics, if you remember, and some were really lightweight, especially when the graphics cards came out. It's like, oh, we can make a really quick and easy thing with this software. But ours was sort of heavy duty software. But I'd say the biggest difference was we built it off the Unix base, which was commands, and the pipe symbol in Unix is send the output of this this command to the input of this command, send the output of this command to the input. So as long as you're passing sort of polygons, and then you put it in a little Unix loop, a shell loop.
Yeah.
So it's all just scripting when you think about it. And then so every SOP, we have those surface operators in Houdini. So every SOP, when you think about it, is just like sort of the instantiation of a simple Unix command that we had then. Of course, we have many more operations now and
Sure.
combined operations, but it really was the Unix shell and the Unix command language that, or the shell language that I think was it. And we had to animate everything, as I said earlier. So
That's amazing.
that's PRISMS. It's just like, we need to do this CBC, network logo. How do we do that? Write some new stuff, reuse some other stuff.
So you mentioned your bread and butter at that time was doing logos, graphic logos, right?
That's logos. Everyone's bread and butter for the most part. When you think about it, there was graphics in defense, there was graphics in medical and scientific visualization, but in the media and entertainment, you got 640 by 480. Mm-hmm. They've got 5 seconds of animation. Maybe there's a couple colored versions, and they're going to give you I think the CBC was over $100,000 for 5 seconds of it,
Wow.
class. But they can run that for a year, and
Sure.
it's taxpayers' money. Or maybe I will. Anyway, you know what I'm saying. It was
of course.
that they had the budgets. Those were the kind of only things, like movies, resolution for them. This is
Way too high. Yeah.
Way too high. Although we did work on, at Omnibus, we worked on Flight of the Navigator
Yep.
and Explorers.
Okay.
And I think there might have been one more, but sometimes it was just putting little tracking video or a fly over a planet in Explorers. So,
Right.
there was in a few shots of the spaceship, and a lot of that was done at the Paramount lot, a little bit up in Toronto, but mostly on the Paramount lot in LA with Kleiser, Jeff
Kleiser,
Kleiser,
Walczak.
and a few, Walczak, yeah, a few of those others gang down there.
Yeah.
So there was a little bit, but that's sort of the movie uses that Omnibus was. In fact, I think Flight of the Navigator was cited by the previs visualization as having one of the first uses of pre-visualization of computers for pre-visualization was in Flight of the Navigator.
Interesting.
So, there's a little bit of movies. We weren't really hooked to the movies. To me, it was I just love doing this, and it's whatever pays the bills, and that's commercials, Kodak, London Life. Just
Sure.
trying to think of the bigger names, but there'd be some wheat and grain kind of thing for the prairie provinces. That's 5 seconds that shows how great their fertilizer is, or something like that.
Gotcha.
Little piece within a commercial, yeah.
Well, that's pretty interesting. So how did PRISMS turn into Houdini?
So PRISMS actually wasn't a graphic program for the longest time. It just needed a name because it was going to be sold, right?
Right. Yeah.
And marketed in the shareholder report. So it actually is an acronym made up by John Penny for, and I'll get this wrong, but I can verify this at another point. But it's photorealistic image synthesis and mathematical simulation, something of that nature. All capital letters. And it was there was hundreds of Unix commands, but nothing graphical till I think I wrote the first one for the IRIX 1020 digitizer, so that when you hit a button on your 2D drawing, you could see the polygon line, and then you hit another, you enter another, and it goes, and if it's wrong, you just you back it off. That was the first graphic program called Digitizer that was a part of the suite of PRISMS programs. But when we started, we just kept writing everything more and more graphic. So the actual main graphical program that we wrote after Omnibus we called for the IRIX was called Action. And you would have a little run script that you could put text startup commands and was called. So you'd have a command file that was called Action, and the default was 123.rc. So that was a little command, little
Right.
joke, I guess. But Action was the graphical program. We just kept adding more of what we had as standalone programs into the Action. But Action and all the other programs were written in this language called, I don't know if anyone remembers the language called C.
Just C.
The C programming language.
Yep.
And then they skipped right past C+. They went to C++. So
Right.
we knew that sort of all our ideas and, you kind of add on, needed a whole, kind of a rewrite, and we wanted to take advantage of the object-oriented language. So
Right.
that was really the genesis. Get rid of the PRISMS name, I guess, which no one really liked. Put it all into sort of a C++. Put all these we had standalone programs, wanted to put it all into one package. And so that we started writing about 3 or 4 years into it, we started writing standalone C++ programs that shipped with PRISMS. And then all of a sudden we just released Houdini, which was all those things in one
bundle.
interface. Yeah.
And so when was Houdini? What was the first Houdini one? When did that come out?
96, I think it was.
Oh, 96. Okay. So PRISMS
Yeah.
was around for a long time then.
It went to PRISMS 7.0.
Right.
But we had a bit of overlap too, because with any user, we'd ship both PRISMS and Houdini.
Yeah. So besides, you said last Starfighter, is that what you said was the first thing?
Well, last Starfighter was done by Digital Productions
Okay.
and Omnibus with all their monies
Sure.
or stock options. I think all these big companies were struggling,
Sure.
so they bought Digital Productions.
What was the first ones that you guys did at SideFX, the first feature film that you guys remembered working on it or helped?
Well, first
software?
of all, I always tell all the people, my parents' friends and my wife's friends, as they
Sure.
sit around, go, "What movie did you work on?" I go, "Well, I don't actually work. I do Microsoft Word. I give it to Chris
Yeah.
Nichols. He writes a novel. I give
Sure.
it to someone else, and he writes like some sort."
Sure.
I said, "So we don't write," but I would say like Children of the Corn was one of the first ones that it was used on. The first PRISMS one might have been Jingle All the Way.
Okay.
And then TimeCop
Wow.
by
Okay.
VIFX in
Yeah.
in LA.
I think VFX got joined with Rhythm. That's-
Yeah, and Vision Art was another big one. They worked on Independence Day and won Academy
Sure.
for Independence. They were used a lot of Houdini. So it really started around Houdini 2 or 3, where people they'd already used PRISMS on some pieces of movies. But in fact, I have a big long list of that I've stopped keeping, but because Houdini's basically on everybody. It's like, oh, I got 1 movie, so 2 this year, 4 this year, 8 this year, and
Sure.
it's like put a P, and then I started putting a P or an H, to distinguish whether it was PRISMS used or Houdini used, and number of shots that I could determine, maybe
Right.
some notes about the artist. Now it's just like, and that was the beautiful thing, I think, Chris. I'm getting into your era for sure. But it's like you knew everyone that worked on everything.
Yes,
because
that's true.
there were only 5 shots in this movie, and you knew that guy that worked on it,
Yep.
or the 3 guys that worked on it and stayed up late at night. And now it's just like everyone across the planet, is working on
Sure.
shots.
Yeah, I remember actually for I wasn't working at Chaos at the time, but I remember the very first feature film that was done with V-Ray, that they did a shot with V-Ray. It was for Final Destination. So it was like, oh yeah, and there's that log falling off, and you know exactly who worked on it and what it was. But I know when I started,
it's really rewarding, and not that it isn't
No, of
now,
course.
but these are like little big
Yeah.
milestones at the time. Yeah.
yeah, for sure. I mean, I remember sort of when I started to get into visual effects, obviously. It was just sort of transitioning away from the SGI world to the PC world, and Maya was sort of the de facto 3D package that people were using. Except all these other guys in this other room were doing stuff in Houdini, and I had no idea what was going on. I was at Digital Domain at the time, and there was the Houdini guys were like gods.
Yeah.
It was very different. How did you guys sort of you knew you guys were doing something different, and you sort of were approaching the world differently, especially in the effects and simulation side of things. What sort of inspired that effects and simulation thing?
Well, we didn't. We're just doing things naively. I'm not a business guy with a strategy and a plan. It's like, oh, you got to be different. Just doing whatever the customer wants, ultimately. And first of all, how it got into Digital Domain was they started up this company with Scott Ross, IBM, Dan Winston, and Cameron, and they just had to get going quick if they're going to compete at the level of ILM, who has all this proprietary software, which was probably one of our biggest competitors at the time, was proprietary software, because everyone had to do that. So it's not at the high level. It wasn't always Maya. It was like, oh, we have stuff at ILM, but Digital Domain had nothing. And when they just started hiring artists. That's what you do when you have a startup. You just sort of fill the strategy by paying lots of money to some people, and that's not a bad thing. It's just kind of like how the thing shifts. And they went to Kevin Mack and said, "What software do you want?" And Kevin Mack said, "PRISMS," and it's like, okay. So he and others that came from South Africa.
Jason Iverson
and Mark Horsfield and
Prescott.
Stuff like that. Prescott, yeah, and they all were already onto the that way of working. Yeah. But how did we kind of start focusing on visual effects? Well, one, those were the kind of people that got it and got the best use. But we were selling everywhere in the world. In the early '90s, we had resellers. I think we had like 12 or 13 resellers. I still have the reseller book over there. Mm-hmm. But then when the graphics cards came in, and a lot more people could get on board. You see people that understand business a lot better than I. They say, okay, it's all about market share, and it's a rush for market share. And then you just saw all these little guys, all these companies drop off, be acquired, because I think it was like mid-90. I'm competing against 3 public companies. There's SideFX is, there's SGI that has Alias and Wavefront. Sure. They're public. Yep. And they're going to, make sure everything stays on the SGI box. Then there's Autodesk, who has bought 3D Max, 3ds Max. And then there's Avid, which is a big, editing system that bought Softimage, and they're just like going everywhere and pricing and getting into trying to figuring out how to get schools and training. So they become the hot things. So if we're going to survive, I had a very smart guy, because I'm not smart, who said, we need to focus on a segment that we can, make a difference, and the right side, a true segment we can get to, we can service, that appreciates us. Could be games, could be Japan. You have to kind of go through this thing, and it ended up being that high-end film effects. So it's not that software wasn't used everywhere. In fact, it was used in all sorts of things, installations and in Japan and the kind of thing. But it was like, we'll sell to anyone, but you won't. We're just going to focus on high-end. And it was all right at Hollywood. I mean, they were all there. It wasn't a global industry at that point, right? This is probably like late, I'll just say 2000, somewhere around there, where we're just like all in on high-end visual effects. So, and I know that we were the best software and for them. And I'll tell you why I know that, because they have money. They could buy anything they want, right?
Sure.
And they don't have to buy PRISMS or Houdini. Right. They could buy whatever they want. And they kept renewing and adding Houdini. So we just kept taking their money and saying, what do you need? What do you want? Oh, we'll put that in. And sort of we held our own. And of course, now we're holding more than our own.
Sure.
We're going gangbusters. But that was what saved us, is just to focus on high-end visual effects. But I'm happy to sell anywhere. I mean, I love feature animation. I love, it wasn't a love and a passion. Nothing against visual effects. It was, I just have a lot of interest, and so it had nothing to do with me or people in the company per se. It was more like I'd say a survival at that point.
Yeah, I mean, I just remember seeing some stuff that I just didn't, at the time I just didn't know how it was possible to do it, and I only knew it because Houdini. It was like, it's a Houdini thing. And then the Digital Domain had Voxel B, which was their voxel renderer, which was created all these splashes and stuff for Lord of the Rings, and as well as Triple X and all those other shows they did. And it was just unbelievable to me to see all that progression. So, but at the time also, Houdini was, if I'm entering very, very early 2000s and I'm looking at Houdini, it was daunting to look at. You know, it was a beautiful thing, and it was like, oof, this is a completely different way to wire your brain to make this work. But that's changed over the years.
Well, I think it especially was if you had exposure to another package, and that also became a bit of an impediment. It's like every package is hard.
Right. Yeah.
I look at someone doing something in Wavefront or Maya and go, "Are you kidding me?"
Yeah.
So it only is made worse. It's not like it's not like there's a perfect test to say which one's harder, but maybe we didn't put as much prompts in or usage kind of things in. But then look at the user base we focused on. We said, do you want to have a pop-up menu, or do you want us to make the water solver faster? And what the customer base that we were serving at the time was
Right.
answering. So we weren't trying to make it obtuse and hard. We were trying to make sure it was the best it could be for Jason Iverson.
Right. Exactly. Jason wants this, we give what Jason wants.
Well, yeah, he might have been like the center of some sort of, bullseye.
Right.
Now he's probably moved off to the edge of that bullseye somewhere, but he's still inputting as we speak. There's probably
Yeah.
stuff
No,
through.
I saw him not too long ago. He's doing very well.
Yeah.
Well, so that's interesting, but and obviously you guys looked at things in a very much of a node-based construction of things, which now is much more common. But at that time, there was only a few things that really focused on node-based ideas. Maybe Flame was very node-based and things like that.
Yeah, I remember one thing that I think it was Tom Benoit or something did Particus. There was these little experiments that it was kind of cool to do some wiring. Greg always said a lot of the wiring came from, he's big into music, so it's like the Moog, synthesizer, and you plug these things in and you plug different things in and you get different results. So it also made a ton of sense to what we're doing at Omnibus if you go way back when, because it's like, I don't want to redo everything, but that third step, as long as I have the recipe, I just have to change one thing in the third step.
Right. Well, how have you noticed Houdini change, either over the last so many years? Have you noticed the change, or the way that people use it has changed, or how has things changed for you guys?
Well, I think the customer set has changed, and so we've gotten bigger. But we get bigger, and then we get more tools, and the non VFX. So we've been really focusing beyond VFX. Let me put it that way.
Yeah.
Ever since the demise of soft image and maybe the non-advancements in some of the other areas. So it's like, oh, okay, we have another $1.
Mm-hmm.
We'll still do stuff for the VFX because that's the bread and butter, and we'll just but we'll now rewrite the geometry library, and that takes 2 years, or we'll rewrite but right now you can see we've rewritten the whole lighting system, which we call Solaris. It's based on it's 100% like a USD core, so it's like look dev lighting, you get all these benefits. So we're just rewriting pieces that we never had the time. It's not because for lack of we don't care about the other parts of a pipeline. We're just trying to survive, as I said, but now it's time. And it's kind of neat because there's enough changes. It's like, wow, you can do so much more with the graphics cards than you could if I'd rewritten this thing 8 years ago. So sometimes waiting for the rewrite it doesn't matter if someone else went first. You can use someone else's, they pave the way, and you say, let's do it right, or let's use the very, very latest research. Let's see if we can get some ML in that kind of thing. So basically, it's still a full pipeline. We're just rewriting all the pieces in what we think's the right order. We're doing the character stuff, which we just launched a lot of the character tools, and we'll do some more before Annecy, I think, which is a big animation show in Annecy, France, in June. So yeah, so the characters getting a lot of that, and who knows, maybe some other pieces of the pipeline.
Well, I think, Solaris is kind of brilliant. Honestly, it's someone had to take the first step, and I'm glad it was you guys to do it, because I think it was so important to think of something that is based on USD that actually makes sense to do, right? As opposed to, because it really, a lot of people resisted USD because they still wanted to be stuck in their little, walled gardens. And I think you guys really looked at it. And honestly, our customers are all into USD, and Solaris is very, very exciting to them.
Well, it's like a USD editor at the end
Right.
of the day. It was because it's native. We, you know, we are actually it's sort of fluke though in many ways, Chris. We were just sort of in about 2 years into rewriting our lighting and look dev, and a lot of it's just research and asking a lot of questions. And one of our leads on the project of rewriting lighting and looked at, because you could see stuff like Clarice and Katana and stuff like that. It's like, we could get more real time into this. So we're looking at it, we can get light editors and light linkers and all that. Mm-hmm. And one of these meetings was with Pixar, and they go, you should base it on a USD. So that it's like, so all that work is like kind of scrap that, we're going USD. So timing was everything, I think, in that meeting, and we're very happy we went that route. It's a whole new subsystem, but over time we're sort of making things easier and easier to get in. If you don't commit as a studio, it's a little harder, or even as an individual. Like I find that the one-off people, if they do everything in USD, they're just so happy. But if you're sort of got a foot in both worlds of SOPs and USD, it's probably a little more challenging. But
sure.
That said, the benefits far outweigh any little struggle. So I think it's I'm sure it's the right thing to do. It's really helped USD.
Yeah. Well, what are your thoughts on Hydra and how how the viewport is changing as well?
Well, to me that's probably one of the benefits that we
right.
ended up getting excited about when we're talking to adopting this standard. It's like, wait, if we're rewriting our render, and anyone else has USD, we can do that, and we can also more easily support any other render out there, as long as we don't have to sort of help them, convince them that they should write a Houdini,
right?
That works with Houdini, just
make a delegate.
Delegate, yeah.
Yeah.
So that I think is really cool for the industry, and I mean I'm all about like let's share, and I hate with the walled gardens, and obviously we all have to make some money, but
sure.
I also love SIGGRAPH and sharing of ideas, and I found there was a lot of times, and still, that it's like, I don't know what do you got in your hand, kind of thing. It's
right.
Come on.
I think it's interesting also because obviously especially in visual effects, people are very, very much want to have an open pipeline, right?
Yeah.
And that pipeline is I think it's very beneficial to everyone because also. The other thing is that a lot of these studios now, especially on big feature films, they have to share data. And the more they can share, the better it is for everyone. So if someone embraces an open source platform or then they're going to go to that, I think, above anything else.
Yeah. That said, I totally respect original ideas and proprietary software that we might have the ability to see by visiting all these studios. And the last thing we want to do is steal anyone's advantage. It's only when it sort of becomes common practice and everyone's doing it just in a kind of convoluted way. It's like, okay, we're going to write a feathering system that's not like anyone else's feathering system, and
right.
We're going to do it, and we do it, and it's not a secret sauce. It's just native to Houdini.
What are some of your favorite things that you guys made over the years? You mentioned feathers, but you guys do like they have a thing that does this. Like, what are some of the favorite little things you guys did?
Well, the feathering that just came out in Houdini 20 is like over the top. Like
right.
It's just like obviously it's my current favorite of like kind of functional things, because it starts, it's like you can go right down and control the barbs on it and change it down the way. It's like, wait, I'm not smart enough to work in my own company. What the hell is this? Wizardry. That's what it is.
Yeah.
And being an animator, I love the some of this Apex ephemeral rigging that's now in Houdini 20, and the promise we got to get more animator tools, but the rigging is already like just blows me away.
Nice.
It's because you can switch back and forth with with constraints. You can use some physics to and then turn on the physics to get the ball doing what you need, and then turn it right off again and keep on animating. It's like again, it's one of those things, being an animator, to watch some of the character animation being created in the early stages with our new software.
Yeah.
But thinking back over time, good. That's a good question, because there's so many cool little things. Like, I'm the biggest fan. I think the staff knows that when there's stuff that's in like Houdini 10 or 11, and I go to the desk and I go, oh my, it's like I'm just like salivating. It's like, I wish I was still a programmer and animator. I'm living so vicariously through these people.
I think it's awesome. I think I was seeing the weird, amazing sort of edge case scenarios that you guys have solved over the years that have totally changed the way people think. And I also think it's interesting because I've seen the software that you guys create enables certain things to happen that actually influenced films to use those things. I found that so you guys influenced the direction of film, I think, in a lot of interesting ways.
Yeah, I think like something like What Dreams May Come, which won the Academy Award. It's like, it's like you have to have kind of like play around with some tool in a system like Houdini to sort of fool around with the wind and the flow and then the color and then the changing, and it's like, whoa, the whole landscape. Wait, we can do that, and so, and certainly with motion graphics, a lot of it's just like, show me something else, show me something else, show me something else. So
sure.
With some wedging now and PDG, which can wedge like infinitely, you can just kind of like serve up a whole lot of either training data, but in the case we're talking about, you can serve up a whole lot of choices for a director.
Yeah, I think it's really kind of fascinating. What are you seeing as what's coming up next for you guys?
Well,
what direction are you got? I mean, for example, you mentioned you're looking at things that are outside of visual effects. What are those fields? Are you looking at automotive, architecture? What are the things you're looking at?
Well, first of all, I think of visual effects is a pretty pure thing. Obviously, everything's a visual effect. So the first goal, we have a lot of growth within media and entertainment.
Sure.
When you go into the lighting side and the character side and the modeling and compositing,
right.
Those are certainly all tools that our current customers want in no particular order or some, because they all want something different. But we have a lot of growth within the current customers, and then there's still customers in Europe, largely Europe and Asia, that are just hear about Houdini, but they're not really. They're trying to get more customers within M&E. And then, of course, games is probably the smallest of them.
Right.
TV, commercials, animation, motion graphics is probably the larger than gaming. But we have a growing game. There's things we can do that particular to games. Connections into the engines, of course, better environment tools, which we didn't advance that much in this release, but we showed a little ML on those, and we're going, we have some growth. I think the games could take advantage of some of that. The character animation workflows are suitable for games. Lighting, USD a little less so. So I think, first of all, within M&E, we have a lot of growth, so that's a lot of what drives us over the next few years. That said, we've always had customers outside,
right.
Designers, visual, scientific, viz labs, medical, wallpaper designers. It's like those are really cool. Like a courtroom, courtroom recreation. It's like, that's going to some other software, but it's like we could do that. You could do that in Houdini. It's a little overkill, but is it a market? Is it sizable? Can I get my hand around autonomous driving vehicles? Right.
But even just like car configurators, I could see if you're that would be a huge Houdini would be a huge advantage there.
Right, and you don't even have to know you're using Houdini, right? Because you can throw it up the engine, Houdini engine, the non-graphical Houdini up in the cloud, and have thousands of them, and then there's some interface that goes and does a couple changes, and the engine's all there. If that's the only thing you do, then write it natively. Don't use Houdini. Right. But we're certainly a great prototype for that sort of stuff. But hopefully, we'll find some good use cases that kind of scale. Let
Sure.
me put it that way. But you're into a whole, maybe a partner in there too. That's the other thought, is like, if it's a whole new Rolodex and it's not who I call on and my expertise, and to focus the company a little bit, there's probably a good partnership opportunity.
Yeah.
If anyone's listening, Judith Crow.
Judith is awesome.
Yeah.
I did a podcast with her as well, since it was,
I know.
It was great. It was,
Yeah.
really cool. So I also, like, you guys have won several awards over the years. What are some of those awards you guys have won?
Well, we've won from the science and technical, the AMPAS science and technical division. We've won 5, sort of unique awards.
Right.
And as you probably know, there's 3 different levels they can
Yep.
award those things at: certificate,
Plaque,
a plaque, and
or the Oscar.
and the actual Oscar. And they don't have to award any in any given year, and they can award 500 in a year. But
Right.
typically, I'd say that on average, the Oscar's been awarded every other year, or 2 years out of every 3 years, something like that. So it was kind of neat. That's our biggest award.
You guys
to
won
date.
an Oscar.
Yeah, an Oscar. Maya's won or Alias won an Oscar too. So
Right.
in the first one, we had the certificate and Alias had the plaque. The next one, we had the plaque. I thought, always a bride, never bridesmaid. Always a bridesmaid, never a bride. So
Yeah.
anyway, yeah, it was nice to get the Oscar, but we've gotten a couple, 3 plaques and 2 certificates, I guess, over the years. And they generally go to the people, but in the Oscars case, only one person was named. That was Mark Allant, our very first hire.
Right.
And SideFX. So I was kind of reluctant, but happy to get up and accept it on behalf of all the great programmers that we have.
That's awesome. When was that awarded to you guys?
2019, I think it was.
Okay.
That's the thing, Chris, about getting older. It's like I have all this stuff in Excel, all the dates, everything you need, but you said, "Oh, don't prep, man."
So what is it that you want to do? I mean, obviously you said you keep talking about how your company is getting smarter than you are. So what do you want to do? What are the things that excite you?
Personally,
Yeah.
or SideFX, on behalf of SideFX. Well, first of all, this is there's nothing else I want to do but be at SideFX and help shepherd it through. And so they just have to let me know when I'm getting old and decrepit and not being able to do it. But I mean, just hire smart people. But one thing I really love is just production. I have to be real careful because I don't want to compete with my customers, but I kind of want to eat our dog food. But plus, I just love it personally.
Sure.
So if I can get close to production but keep my eye on SideFX, or somehow get Houdini a part of that.
Right.
So I'm always kind of thinking, because there's so many cool things in production that drives new ideas, and I'm not talking virtual production, VR. I mean, yeah, if that's what it is, or ML, whatever it is, I think there's something really cool, but at the end, it's like, what's the cool story and formats that haven't been tested and all that. So I really think, if I could find the time to sort of get a little closer. I did create 52 episodes of a TV show, a kids TV show around the year 2000 called Monster by Mistake. And it was like, there was this thing that was bigger than SideFX just down the street that I, was a, executive producer and creator, and they used Houdini, but I never had much time to just hang. I was too busy trying to work with SideFX. So that was kind of cool. I don't know if I'd do that, but I was going to all the shows selling, so I learned that biz a little bit about selling, developing pitch books and pitches and things like that.
Yeah.
So I never want to necessarily do it exactly that way. It's not that it was a bad experience. It was just been there, and it's there's something else cool to do.
I mean, it's interesting. I was talking with I don't know if you know Chris Blythe or not, but he and I were talking, and he says, it's amazing to see how things have changed in visual effects. If you had told me 15 years ago that the programs that people would be really booming right now would be Houdini and Blender, And it just doesn't seem like, Houdini was always very cool, but very niche. But now it's just getting into so many wonderful things. And I'm really, really impressed with what you guys have done in the last 15 years. It's just really interesting. And congratulations, man. It's really cool.
But we're not done.
I know. I can't wait to see where you guys are going. And then I know, as you mentioned, it's like you're doing more and more in animation. It's like, well, yep, that makes sense. That makes a lot of sense. But
it's just a lot. It's all a lot of fun. We just want all the parts working together.
Sure.
And because why should it be so hard? And I don't mean Houdini. I just mean animating in general. It's like, I have to create my own asset management file to save to get to your render. Wait, I got this cool tool, but there's no standard. So FBX, will that work?
Right.
It's like let's standards, man. Like, it's not the only solution, obviously, but I'm glad to get back to some standards, because then we can all. I don't mind the competition. It's sort of like being an insurgent. It's almost an easier position to be in. Because
we were stuck on FBX for way too long.
Yeah,
for sure. Well, listen, I know I don't want to take up too much more of your time, but it was awesome talking to you, and thank you so much for this great history into Houdini. I know that we've V-Ray for Houdini has become more and more important for us. And
Absolutely.
We're very excited about where it's going, and where our customers are excited about it. We are excited about it. So congratulations, Kim. And hopefully I'll see you again soon.
I absolutely, at one of these different conferences that we all see, that you and I, that seems to be our stock and trade now.
We always meet at different random places, and it'll probably FMX next time or something like that.
It will happen. I'll see you there.
Thank you.
All right.